Hi, my name is Rachel Miller, and I am here today to talk to you about lactic fermentation as a method for preserving food in Afghanistan, especially through the long, very cold, very difficult winters. And I hope that you find this informative. Two methods that I'm going to show you today involve using fermented cabbage and fermented cauliflower. For one thing, cabbage is a very easy to ferment ingredient simply because it has a lot of the bacteria that's required for fermentation, which is also found in yogurt, already present within the leaves of the cabbage itself. And moreover, Afghans may find this to be a useful concept simply because the ingredients and the tools that are needed to make fermented vegetables, or cultured vegetables if you will, are already available. All you need is a cabbage, or whatever vegetable you're using, an earthenware crock, which you may have seen in several bazaars or marketplaces, or there are tandoor makers that I'm sure would be able to make something like this to specifications using a plain silica glaze for the crock earthenware piece. You need a plate in order to put it into the crock to keep your product submerged in the brine, which I'll show you in a minute. And a weight, I have a can of salt right now, but some sort of a weight. You can even use a cleaned rock, just something to keep everything pushed down into the liquid. We are chopping up our cabbage now. So first of all, what you're going to want to do is finely chop your cabbage head. As you can see, I've already done some of it right here, so that you can get an idea of what the final texture will look like. I'm putting it in the crock or the crock right now, just to keep it somewhat corralled. So when you're slicing, just make sure that you're cutting it into very small pieces like this. And one way to make the additional or the next steps easier is to turn it and just start slicing and start cutting it into small little shreds. Next, we're going to actually salt the cabbage and start breaking it down to put it in the crock. So I have it in two large bowls here. This was a very large cabbage. And we're going to just add 1 tablespoon of salt per head of cabbage, and then sprinkle it on liberally. And you can add a little bit more if you would like to do so. I've salted that one. And first thing that you're going to want to do is just reach your hands in and start squeezing the actual mixture. This will take about 15 minutes before you break it down enough to have enough juice release to cover the cabbage with its own brine. As we continue this process, I wanted to take a few minutes to remind you of some of the basic pointers to keep in mind when making any kind of fermented or cultured vegetables. First of all, you want to have very clean crocks, clean bowls, and especially make sure your hands are clean. So, because those bacteria on your hands and that are present on other surfaces may interfere with some of the beneficial bacteria that is fermenting and souring the food safely. The second point that I wanted to make sure that you knew is that try to use glass or earthenware containers, because those containers will help you. Those containers will not react as the vegetables ferment. And then lastly, try not to use wooden spoons to stir with, because the bacteria that may also be present on a wooden spoon could interfere with the beneficial bacteria again. And as a side note, try to use green cabbage, because red cabbage has a tendency to turn gray if it ferments. Next, I wanted to show you a little bit about what's going to happen to the sauerkraut as it changes in the bowl. If you want to look in the bowl here, I've got a lot of that juice there, and that becomes the brine itself after squeezing and mixing that salt in. And it also bruises the leaves and makes them a little bit easier to release the liquid. So that salty liquid is going to be the brine where your sauerkraut or where your cultured vegetables will be safe. And the final step that you want to keep in mind when you're making your sauerkraut or your fermented cultured vegetables is this this product here. It has a lot of brine in it, so you want to keep everything completely submerged by the brine while it's fermenting. So to do that, we take our plate or whatever flat piece that you have, just something to keep it down in there, and submerge it like so. Now, in order to keep everything else down, take your weight, whatever that weight may be, set it on top, and then if you want, while the product is fermenting, go ahead and cover it with some sort of a light cloth, just to keep off any surface mold. So this is going to take probably about 7 to 10 days before you should first start tasting. Keep it anywhere from 70, 75 degrees, something like that. It would be ideal to be able to put it in a root cellar or in a location where the temperature is fairly constant. Make sure that if you see any scum or mold forming on the surface of the brine, just make sure that you pull that off with a spoon, or even just dip your fingers in and pull it off. The food underneath is still safe. That surface mold isn't going to affect it in any way. So it should keep for anywhere from, a week to up to 8 months approximately. So just depending on what temperature you keep it at, and depending on the fact that you do give it some careful attention now and again, make sure that you taste it frequently until you reach that tangy sourness of the vegetables. So, and it will be ready to eat, and it will be safe. Just make sure that you cover it appropriately. However, if any of the liquid evaporates off and you do have vegetables that are exposed, just add approximately a tablespoon of salt to a quart of water, give or take. This isn't exactly, an exact science. And pour it in just to submerge the vegetables again. But keep in mind, it will make the brine a little bit saltier every time that you do that. So I hope that you've enjoyed this, and our next segment is about fermenting other vegetables such as cauliflower, which is very plentiful in Afghanistan. See you soon. Welcome back. We're starting our second project here, and as you can see, I'm chopping up some onions and a very common vegetable in Afghanistan, some cauliflower, and some other vegetables such as green beans, a little bit of garlic, and lemon juice, and actually whey from yogurt. These ingredients will also be used to create the process of fermenting our cauliflower. Next, we've cut up our vegetables. Right now I've got a combination of onions, cauliflower, and green beans together for culturing the vegetables. I've got a little bit of lemon juice for some acidity, and a little bit of garlic for flavor. These are the two fermenting agents that I've chosen to show to you today. This is whey from yogurt, and this is some of the sauerkraut juice that we already made, or some of the cabbage juice. It'll have a little bit of that bacteria surrounding it. And this is 2 tablespoons of salt dissolved in a quart of water. For this many vegetables, we'll probably need a little bit more, but I just wanted to put everything out so that I could show you. So we're going to start out with our next container. Again, remember to wash your hands, make sure that everything is clean, and you're using primarily either crockery from earthenware crocks or glass bowls to work with this. Try not to use wood. So we're going to pack our vegetables in here as tightly as we can. Throw in those green beans. So, and usually you can do this in any amount that you want. I'm going to throw in a few more of these, and also take your garlic. This is probably about 6 cloves or so that have been cut up and minced. So just go ahead and pour that in, right like so. Give a little bit of a swirl in there. Next thing you want to do is take your lemon. this provides a little bit of acidity, and you're going to pour this over the top. And the most important part here is the fermenting agents. You're going to want to use either yogurt, which already has the lactobacilli within it, and it's a very good live culture to start with. Usually you'd use about 6 tablespoons for this, give or take. So I don't have quite that much in here, but just keep that in mind as a future proportion to every gallon of vegetables that you're doing. So just pour that over top. However, if you are in a pinch and you don't have enough yogurt whey, you can use some of the sauerkraut juice, which is already also pre-populated with that lactobacillus bacteria. That's going to help with that fermentation. I'm using both for the purposes of illustration, but feel free to use one or the other. Now, you take your salt water as your last step, and you just pour it over top, and we'll require a second jar of that. So you're going to continue in doing pretty much the same as you did with the sauerkraut by putting a plate on top and then putting a weight on top of that and letting it sit for about 7 to 10 days. Do remember to start tasting after that 7-day period, and don't let it get too hot because heat will kill the bacteria, and getting too cold will slow the fermentation process quite a bit. However, once the fermentation process, which again is that 7 to 10 day period approximately, or up to about 3 to 4 weeks, it just depends on when it tastes good to you. You can slow down further fermentation by putting it in a cooler area to slow down the bacteria's reproduction capability. Also, just as a note, for all fermented foods, food safety is very important. One of the problems or one of the issues that you may run into is having to deal with either too hot or too cold for that fermentation. So if anything smells off to you, or if anything smells wrong in some way, don't eat it. Throw it away, get rid of it, make sure that you are keeping your food supply safe.